I,
your
sir.
right hand and follow after me. Ako,
Ako,
si
si Benigno Aquino III,
mataimtim kong pinanunumpaan,
ay temtem kong pinanunumpaan,
natutuparin ko ng buong katapatan
natutuparin ko ng buong katapatan
at sigasig ang aking mga tungkulin
at sigasig ang aking mga tungkulin
bilang Pangulo ng Pilipinas,
bilang Pangulo ng Pilipinas.
pangangalagaan at ipagtatanggol
Pangangalagaan at pagtatanggol
ang kanyang
ang
konstitusyon,
kanyang konstitusyon,
ipatutupad ang mga batas nito,
patutupad ang mga batas nito,
magiging makatarungan sa bawat tao
magiging makatarungan sa bawat tao,
at itatalaga ang aking sarili
at tatalaga sa aking sarili
sa paglilingkod sa bansa.
sa paglilingkod sa bansa.
Kasihan nawa ako ng Diyos.
Kasi nawa ako ng Diyos.
Congratulations.
Maraming salamat po.
Sa tamang pamamahala, gaganda ang buhay ng lahat. At sa buhay na maganda, sino pa ang gugustuhin bumalik sa panahon ng pang-aapi? Kung kasama ko kayo, may tataguyod natin ang isang bayan kung saan pantay-pantay ang pagkakataon. Dahil pantay-pantay nating ginagampanan ang ating mga pananagutan. Ang bawat isa sa atin ay nanindigan sa presinto. Bumoto tayo ayon sa ating karapatan at konsensya. Hindi tayo umatras sa tungkulin nating ipaglaban ang karapatan. Pagkatapos ng bilangan, pinatunayan ninyo na ang tao ang tunay na lakas ng bayan. Ito ang kahalagahan ng ating demokrasya. Ito ang pundasyon ng ating pagkakaisa. Nangampanya tayo para sa pagbabago. Dahil dito, taas na muli ang Pilipino. Tayong lahat ay kabilang sa isang bansa kung saan maaari ng mangarap muli. Walang lamangan, walang padrino at walang pagnanakaw. Walang wangwang, walang counterflow, walang tong. Kayo ang boss ko. Kaya't hindi maaaring hindi ako makinig sa mga utos ninyo.
Today, the Philippines mourns the death of one of its former leaders, the face of Daang Matuwid, President Benigno Aquino III. You're watching a special coverage of One News and One PH. I'm Edlin Gao.
And I'm Chicky Verhel. We're beaming to you live via Signal, channels 1 and 8 on SD, and channel 250 on HD, simulcast on Radio 5, 92.3 News FM. We're also streaming live on Signal Play, as well as the Facebook and YouTube accounts of One News and One PH.
You know, Chicky, I do remember we were playing back that video a while ago of the inauguration of, President Aquino in 2010. And I do remember that day, on the way to that inauguration, the President-elect and his convoy were headed to Luneta, and they stopped at the stoplights.
Oh, yeah, because this was one of his campaign promises, right?
And that left the PSG agog. They didn't
Right.
know what to do because they don't normally stop at stoplights.
Exactly.
They didn't know whether they should get down and secure the intersection before the light turns green.
Yeah, because this was supposed to be like no wangwang,
Yeah.
no padrino,
Yeah.
no special attention
And
given
that's
to the
one
higher
of the things
officials.
that also marked at least the start of his presidency,
Right.
yung no wangwang. So, just some memories from 2010. Anyway po, 5 taon pa lang mula nang bumaba siya bilang Pangulo at nagimbal o kaya nagimbal ang marami sa pagputok ng balitang pumanaw na si dating Pangulong Noynoy Aquino.
Dinala si Pinoy sa Capital Medical Center sa Quezon City kung saan naroon din ngayon ang ilan niyang kapamilya at kaalyado. At para sa update, may live report mula Capital Medical Center, si Patricia Mangune.
Chiki, kalalabas lang, ilang minuto pa lang nakakalipas ay inilabas na ng Capital Medical Center ang mga labi ni dating Pangulong Noynoy Aquino sakay ang isang ambulansya. Hindi lang binigay sa media ngayon ang mga detalye kung saang punerarya siya dadalhin. Pero ayun nga, inilabas na siya dito. Pero kaninang umaga, maraming mga kaibigan sa politika at kaanak ang dumalaw dito sa ospital. Kasama na dyan si dating DILG Secretary Mar Rojas, si Senator Kiko Pangilinan na pawang mga kaalyado niya sa Liberal Party, gayon din si dating Energy Secretary Rene Almendras na Cabinet Secretary sa Administrasyong Aquino, gayon din ang dating Foreign Affairs Secretary na si Albert Del Rosario. Ang kapatid din ni Pinoy ay pumunta dito bago mag-alas 10 kaninang umaga na si Chris Aquino. So iniintay na lang natin kung magbibigay ba siya ng karagdagang announcement, kung kailan sila magbibigay ng official press statement. Ed, Chiki?
So, Patricia, wala pang official na pahayag. Although, yun nga, nakita na natin yung mga labi na nilabas. Pero wala pa as of now na official na anumang mensahe na binibigay yung pamilya.
Oo, Ed, wala pang kahit anong formal na statement mula sa pamilya, maging ang mga dumalaw dito na sina Senator Kiko o iba pang mga dating cabinet secretaries ay tumangging magbigay ng pahayag. Tikom talaga ang kanilang mga bibig. Binigyan din tayo ng abiso ni dating Yusek Bivalte na mag-antay na lamang ng kung anong oras at kung saan eksakto magbibigay ng official statement ang pamilya Aquino. Ed?
Pero Patricia, dun sa medical side, kanina ay naitanong na rin namin ito pero wala pang sagot. Dead on arrival ba? Makukumpirma ba natin ito? At meron daw instructions na do not resuscitate and do not intubate.
Chiki, hindi pa malinaw ang actual na medical condition ni dating Pangulong Noynoy Aquino nang siya ay isugod dito. Kaya wala pa talagang detalye tungkol sa kanyang naging kalagayan bago siya pumanaw. Chiki?
Pat, well, I know you just said na wala pang medical update, pero I'm sure everybody is curious kung aware yung pamilya kung terminal ba yung kanyang pagkakasakit. Ibig sabihin kasi yung kanyang ina na si Cory Aquino noong 2009, alam ng lahat na talagang malubha na yung kanyang sakit hindi sigurado kung gaano katagal siya tatagal. Ito bang kay dating Pangulong Aquino biglaan ang pangyayari sa inyong pagkakalam o yun nga, hindi sila sigurado kung gaano katagal pa?
Sa ngayon, Ed, hindi pa kasi natin nakakausap ang pamilya kaya hindi natin makumpirma kung naging terminal na rin ba ang naging health condition ni dating Pangulong Noynoy. Pero ang mga paunang reports na nakakarating sa atin ay mayroon siyang kidney problem o kidney condition. Kaya din siya isinugod dito sa ospital. Pero kung ano nga ba talaga ang tunay na nagmiging meet siya para siya ay pumanaw ay inaalam pa natin. Ed?
Alam rin ba natin na Patricia, baka lang kung sinong kasama ni dating Pangulong Noynoy Aquino sa ospital nung siya ay sinugod?
Chiki, hindi pa natin magbigyang linaw kung sino talaga ang mga kasama niya nung actual siyang isinugod dito. Basta nung naabutan natin ay yung mga kaibigan na niya sa politika at si kanyang kapatid na si Chris ang dumalaw dito pagkatapos. Chiki?
Chiki, Pat, siguro marami nagtatanong bakit sa Capital Medical siya isinugod. Kasi itong Capital Medical, di ba Pat, malapit lang yan dun sa kanyang bahay sa Times Street, sa 25 Times Street, dyan sa Quezon City. Parang ilang bloke lang yan
Oo. Kung ang pagbabasehan nga ang kanyang tirahan sa Times Street dito sa may Quezon City, wala pang 5 minutes, nandito ka na sa Capitol Medical Center. Ed.
Parang tatawid ka lang ng Timog Avenue at West Avenue. Anyway, Pat, sa aming kasing pagkakaintindi, well, I don't know if you can confirm this already or not, pero sa aming pagkakaintindi, si dating Pangulong Aquino was undergoing dialysis already for several months. I think several times a week ang kanyang dialysis. So possibly again, it's at least in part kidney failure. Tapos I think he also has diabetes, and some say, but this is not yet confirmed, so we'll have to wait for the family on this. Some sort of cancerous growth.
Yes, meron nga dito, Pat, tsaka Ed, no? Tsaka mga kapatid na mga nagsasabi or mga reports na he died of stage 4 lung cancer. So mamaya siguro ay makukumpirma natin ang lahat ng mga ito. Hopefully, very soon may statement na mula sa pamilya.
Okay, Pat, are we expecting any more people to arrive there? Kasi yun nga, sabi mo nga kanina, nakaalis na
Oo,
yung
yan
labi.
din iniintay natin. Oo. And posibleng wala na munang mga karagdagang bisita dito dahil nga nakalabas na rin ang mga labi ni dating Pangulo. Kaya pati ang media sinasabihan na rin o inabisuhan na rin na mag-disperse na rin muna dahil wala na rin namang aasahan na updates dito.
Okay,
Sa
if you don't mind,
ngayon,
one more question, Pat. I'm wondering lang kung may mga nagpuntahan dyan mga kaibigan na hindi mga personalidad, yung mga well, actually supporter, mga supporter o tagahanga o ano man ni dating Pangulong Aquino. Kung merong taong bayan nagpunta dyan.
Kung ang sinasabi mo ay mga publiko na supporters, wala naman, Ed, dahil ang mga personalidad lang talaga ang mga nakita natin, nakasasakyan talaga at mga binantayan din ng mga pulis sa kanilang pagdating. Ed.
Okay, Patricia Mangune, maraming salamat live po mula sa Capitol Medical Center kung saan sinugod si dating Pangulong Aquino.
Former President Noynoy Aquino was swept into power in 2010 following the death of his mother, former President Cory Aquino, in 2019. Cory's death prompted calls for Noynoy, who was then a senator, to run for president. Pinoy told Bloomberg News that he never had any ambition to become president, but he believed that fate and the Filipino people put him in the position. Aquino was born on February 8, 1960 to democracy icons Ninoy and Cory Aquino. He was the only son among 5 children. He is an economics graduate from Ateneo de Manila University who later served as a congressman and senator. He represented the 2nd District of Tarlac for 3 terms before placing 6th in the May 2007 senatorial elections. Before his career in the government, Aquino worked as a retail supervisor and promotions manager at Nike Philippines.
Former President Noynoy Aquino's term will be remembered for many issues that marked his term, both good and bad. His first issue happened 2 months after assuming office. In August 2010, 8 Hong Kong tourists were killed by former policeman Captain Rolando Mendoza in an incident later known as the Manila hostage crisis. President Aquino also saw his trust rating slip during the impeachment trial of former Supreme Court Chief Justice Renato Corona in 2012. Now, a year later, Aquino was heavily criticized for the way he handled Super Typhoon Yolanda that left over 6,000 Filipinos dead. Major political storms also came Aquino's way when the pork barrel scam and the Disbursement Acceleration Program, or DAP controversy, were exposed during his time. 3 senators and several lawmakers were arrested on plunder and graft charges due to the Priority Development Assistance Fund issues. While in the succeeding year, DAP was declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. But perhaps the biggest controversy that Aquino had to face during his term as president was the Mama Sapano clash. 44 SAF officers, 18 MLF fighters, and at least 5 civilians died due to the botched operation. However, before his term ended, Noynoy Aquino had caused a lasting damage to vaccine confidence in the country by launching a national dengue vaccination program for Dengvaxia vaccine.
Despite the controversies, ex-President Aquino also made a handful of accomplishments during his time as the 15th President of the Philippines. The country's economy flourished under his term, growing an average of 6.2%, twice exceeding 7%, the fastest since the 1970s. This comes amid an inflow of foreign direct investments during his term. The fight against corruption is also a highlight in Pinoy's administration. Under his Daang Matuwid platform, driven by the philosophy that the country can alleviate poverty if we can rid it of the culture of corruption. During the start of his term in 2010, the Philippines ranked 115th in the Economic Freedom Index, but it managed to climb to 70th place towards the end of his term. Former Communications Secretary Benigno Coloma also reported that the Aquino administration managed to increase employment rate in the country to 94% in his last year in office from 92% in 2015. Some 7.7 million Filipinos were also reportedly lifted out of poverty because of his administration's Pantawid Pamilyang Pilipino program. Among major infrastructure projects that were launched under Pinoy's government were the LRT-1 Extension Project, LRT-2 Extension Project, and the Skyway Stage 3. Pinoy was also the president who challenged China over disputes at the West Philippine Sea. The International Tribunal in The Hague ruled in favor of the Philippines in July 2016, a month after Noynoy's term ended.
At para po pag-usapan ng mga isyong pumaikot kay dating Pangulong Noynoy Aquino, makakasama po natin via StreamYard ang political analyst at ang Pangulo ng Strat-based ADR Institute na si Professor Dindo Manhit. Sir, thank you for joining us and good afternoon po.
Good afternoon, Ed.
Yes, sir. Sir, we're with Chiki Berhel. Sir, first off, sir, how do you think Noynoy Aquino will be remembered? I mean, a lot of things are, of course, said during the term, after the term, but in the end, when all is said and done, how would he be remembered?
It's sad that even your news report, you focused on the negative. But the reality is the president came out of his administration where 6 out of 10 Filipinos still saw him as a very positively in terms of performance. Mm-hmm. And we have also to give him credit to the reality that the good governance mantra, or yung Daang Matuwid, might not have been executed perfectly. There were some missteps, especially in the public delivery of public services or even infrastructure space because of slowness of decision-making. But the reality is a lot of these projects are the ones being claimed by this government. Skyway, Calax, expansion of LRTs and everything. So, and also the reality that what this government really experienced as very good in terms of economic performance was offshoot of the good economic environment that they simply built on, which was started during the Aquino administration. Mm-hmm. So hopefully we remember these things, because after the election of 2016, it has become very political, and we've seen really the rise of what I even call the pandemic of misinformation, and it seems to be not fact-driven anymore.
Well, sir, I do remember nga nung kanyang last survey just before he stepped down, the SWS pegged his survey numbers the highest, I think, among all the previous presidents. He was pegged at 50% net satisfaction rating.
Yeah, net satisfaction. So that means the performance was higher. Mm-hmm. They minus that's why I was saying it's 6 out of 10. Mm-hmm. Filipinos, a little over 60%.
Yes, sir. Well, just for comparatives lang po, so 50% si Noynoy Aquino as of June 2016 net satisfaction rating compared to GMA na ended with negative 45, ERAP with positive 2, FVR with positive 9, at Cory with negative 5, I think. So he was the highest during that time. Yes.
That's why it's quite sad that we have used this past 5 years to really question what they have achieved. And no government is perfect. We became frustrated. I myself was part of a lot of interviews within the network, TV5 network. That was quite critical, but I always give credit to some of their successes. And we hope to remember that, because we seem to have forgotten that given the noise coming from this political polarization that we are experiencing since 2016.
Earlier, Sir Dindo, no, you said that this administration is actually reaping the benefits of the economic platforms that the Aquino administration earlier had. Now, he had this preservation of public infrastructures bill where he made sure that when he was, this was back when he was in the Senate, he made sure that the infrastructure projects are actually of good quality, and he penalizes, or those that actually have defective or come up with defective infrastructure get penalized. Now, you said there were mishaps during the Aquino administration. Now, what caused these mishaps or missteps? Because it's very important, I think, as context, because this administration
Yes.
goes very heavily on build, build, build.
What we blamed the previous government was that it took some time for their infrastructure project to move forward, failing to realize that what took some time was the public-private partnership program. But the DPWH program by then Secretary Babe Singson really achieved a lot. Now, we even have a study of that in our own institute that we published in 2016, about infrastructure. But focus by the public and also by media was really on the PPP. We took some time. And these PPP projects are now the one that's actually are being completed and being enjoyed by the public. And they're not even part of the BBB of this government. They were from previous government, but they have rewritten or changed the narrative already that these were all started by this government, considering these were all awarded, studied, planned during the Aquino government.
So his tagline, former President Benigno Aquino's tagline, "Kayo ang boss ko," was this executed perfectly, and did this work well in the realm of Philippine politics?
We have seen also during that time that there were less arrogance in public posturing of government officials. We have seen that. No? As I've said, you cannot have a perfect government. We have seen some possible or challenges to corruption or even to bad administration in some departments or agencies. No? But we are not seeing, but we saw that the government was also partnering with civil society to make his government transparent and accountable. That's why we were seeing all this. Unlike now, we see this creation of fear or coercion on people who would like to put up these issues in the public space. So parang yun ang difference. That's why we knew about it, because it was actually being encouraged by the government through their partnership, because a lot of the noise came from civil society partners even of the previous government. And we have to also take into consideration also that we all remember the pork barrel, but actually the pork barrel came out because the government of Aquino was the one who ran after Napoles. But it was turned by people like by those who were accused and even charged and went to jail. So napapalitan yung narrative. That's quite sad. No? As I've said, maybe there was some political vendetta or political biases for the filing of cases, but at least it was really an attempt to clean up the pork barrel system in our Philippines. That's why it came out. I remember that was 2013. No?
Yes, sir. Well, to be fair, the pork barrel issue is not specific to the administration of President Aquino. It predates his administration by 4 administrations after Marcos, I think.
Yes. But
so-
we always talk about it happened then. What
Yeah.
happened was
Yung
it
decision
became
lang.
transparent then. That's what I'm saying.
Yes, sir.
It was actually a question of awards during the previous government.
Until
To
I
be
think
factual about it.
until I think 2009.
Yes,
Yeah,
those
in
were
Napoles
the
cases.
so-called ghost projects of 2000.
Yes, sir.
Nine.
Yes, sir. Sir, let's talk about democratic institutions and how they fared during the time of President Aquino. I suppose in any case, kasi your lasting legacy would be how much stronger democratic institutions would stand after your term or when your term ends. Because that is in effect what your legacy would be to democracy. How did they stand after 2016?
They did not finish what they wanted to finish. That's why, remember, they had this thinking of another 6 years plus another 6 years. I don't know if you remember that argument of some Liberal Party loyalists. But that's a reality of building institutions. But we have seen the smooth transfer of power to a president-elect in 2016 that actually attacked him and his performance, no, or his administration. So, and that's what democracy is at the end of the day. So we
Yes,
have
sir.
to give value to that, no? That they may have started rebuilding institutions during that time. 6 years was not enough. You hope that these things continue, whoever gets elected. I think that's the whole spirit of our Constitution, that we just have a one-term president. But as I've said, since 2016, we have become so partisan, polarized, and really divisive politics that we don't remember the goodness of the past. No? Especially when your own economic team kept on talking about building on what was started by the previous government. That's the irony. When the economic team of this government of Duterte, talks to investors, they kept on saying the building blocks. It was previous government that they're just improving it. Pero pagdating sa governance, like he was being attacked.
Yes, sir. Well,
And,
I asked
that
about
was a sad environment. Sorry?
Yes, sir. Well, I asked about democratic institutions because I do remember during that time there was a push by at least some factions within the Liberal Party to pass yung political party reform bill, which would have been which would have put us way ahead in terms of political reform. As well yung bill
That's
dun sa
also true.
dun sa public broadcasting system, turning Channel 4, the government TV station, into a public broadcasting system. Hindi lang natapos.
A lot of initiatives did not finish. And always remember, those are legislative initiatives, Ed. So you cannot always fault the president on that. No? But also, the Political Party Reform Act, those were one of my first involvement with civil society. We were pushing that since 2001, and more so after 2004. So it's really, I think the pushback is really coming from, sad to say, from
Congress.
dynasties who practice political turncoatism or political butterflies. So not only a president, but he could have put his political capital. That's
sir.
the frustration there. He could have used it, but he did not. Maybe as advised, I always say as advised, maybe by some Liberal Party factions who thought that they need to win with traditional political leaders, who in the end left them and shifted to the Dutertes after they won. That's a sad reality of what happened to the Liberals.
Now that you're touching on the issue or the subject of politics, Sir Dindo, right before former President Noynoy Aquino assumed position, there was the Cory Aquino magic. Will there be a Pinoy magic for next year's 2022 elections?
Maybe not as strong as what happened, the boost that President Noynoy, but always remember that President Noynoy, when people thought of his magic, let's be factual on dates, even though he declared his candidacy, he did not get enough boost to be number one in the poll. It took him 6 months. So when he declared for candidacy September 2009, I think it was February when he took the lead in the polls. So it was really what we call in surveys or political analysis, a survey bump that really that pushed to his victory. What I'm seeing now is maybe if the public or the media like you now share and tell the public and really go against this disinformation that we have achieved things during those 6 years. And as I've said, when there were the highest rating president who stepped down, there should be value to that. People seem to have forgotten that, and that might benefit whoever the alternative of the opposition would be against a candidate of President Duterte.
Sir, if you don't mind, one last question. I'd like to go back to yung SWS exit survey. I don't know if you'd call it an exit survey. Basta yung last rating ni...
It's the second quarter survey.
Yes,
Second
sir.
quarter 2016.
I was wondering lang how that happened na he ended on such a high note. I mean, he had the highest ratings for any president leaving his office which was unusual, I suppose, going by
Unusual.
by how most things go. Pero by the next survey, well, kahit hindi by the next survey, pero by the turnaround of the next administration, parang
Can I honest?
ano na?
Can I honestly answer your question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You know where I'm headed, di ba? Parang nagbago
I'll say it
yung
live.
ihip eh.
Hindi nagbago.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Media shapes it also. You started carrying the attacks of the Duterte administration. That's what you reported. Then you have to support that with something that I've argued through the past. There was an echo chamber through different Facebook groups, social media platforms, that created a different narrative which was not factual. That's why I call it now that we are living in a pandemic of disinformation. Since you asked that, I have to answer it that way.
Yes, sir.
So we have to go back really to facts. There are government data, there are historical data, and we don't need to even recreate it. We need to remind people to end this polarization and divisiveness in our country.
Yes, sir. Well, sir, we appreciate what you said, and thank you very much, sir. Okay.
Thank you.
Maraming salamat, Dindo Manhit, President ng Strat-Based ADR Institute, si Professor Dindo Manhit.
Yes.
Sir, we hope to have you again sometime soon.
Thank you, sir.
We will be back with more stories after the break, so keep it here on One News. You're still watching our special coverage on the death of former President Benigno Aquino III. I'm Ed Lingao.
And I'm Chicky Verhel. So Ed, what was your takeaway during our discussion with the Sir Dindo Manhit?
Well, I think it's quite notable to point out na on his last performance rating, he ranked the highest among all the departing presidents. So despite all the controversies that were generated during his term, and there were a lot of controversies generated during his term, he ended on a very high note.
Right.
And that's even coming out a year after Mama Sapa, no? Which where his ratings dipped, I think, to 28 or 38%.
Yes, I don't think we can shy away from the controversies that actually hounded his term as president. Now, one big takeaway there, which was actually connected to my question earlier on the infrastructure projects, because a lot of people have been saying, wala namang nagawa to si Pangulong Noynoy Aquino, buti pa si Pangulong Duterte at may nangyayari. Like we see all the fruits of the we were reaping the fruits, I guess, of the infrastructure projects that were actually laid out during the Aquino administration. So now I guess that's out of the box.
Well, I do remember then, during the time of President Aquino, they were severely criticized for their the slow pace of the disbursement of funds for projects. As in, ang dami at the end of every fiscal year, ang laking budget na naibabalik sa Treasury kasi hindi na ilalabas. And then Public Works Secretary Babe Singson was saying, and I do hope I remember what he said correctly, na they were still busy at that time putting together the mechanism or putting in place the mechanisms to prevent corruption or to shield the department against corruption, because the Department of Public Works and Highways had always been historically one of the more notorious departments.
Yes, one of the controversies, now that you're mentioning funds, I remember the Yolanda, the time of the Yolanda or the Haiyan typhoon, when he was also very heavily criticized for handling the situation. Now, I know you have covered it heavily.
No,
so,
I didn't.
You did
I was
not
in PCIJ during the time.
Okay, but I'm sure you have a lot of information about it. What was your most notable information on that controversy?
Well, until now, it's one of the favorite memes going around the internet, nasaan ang Yolanda funds. I mean, you would still see that meme going around now, nasaan ang Yolanda funds nung panahon ni Pinoy. What a lot of people don't seem to know is that the funds were not really missing. In fact, they were still used they were even used for the Marawi rebuilding. So they were still there. Hindi siya nawala. In fact, it was carried over to the Duterte administration, and big part of it was used to rebuild Marawi.
Right.
So hindi talaga siya nawala.
O yun. So alam natin kung saan yung Marawi, yung Yolanda
At least a part
funds.
of the Marawi
part of it.
rebuilding came from the Yolanda funds. And the Duterte administration said that itself.
Yeah.
It's just that, it's one of the more popular memes that had gone around in the last 5 or 6 years.
Duterte administration probably said it itself, but probably not so much highlighted given the well.
But that's how things are when
right.
you have so much polarization.
Exactly.
Anyway, so there. Tributes continue to pour in from the colleagues and political allies of former President Aquino. Vice President Lenny Robredo says she is heartbroken over losing a good friend and an honest politician. Robredo says Noynoy always tried to do what is right, even when it was not popular. Supreme Court Associate Justice Marvic Leonen says he considers it an honor to have served with Aquino. He was, of course, appointed by President Aquino. Aside from being Aquino's appointee in the Supreme Court, Leonen also served as the principal peace negotiator during Noynoy's presidency.
In a heartfelt tribute over on Twitter, Foreign Affairs Secretary Teddy Locsin Jr. said the late president was not fond of him. Still, Locsin said he admired the guy for being incorruptible, indifferent to power, and resilient, though many misconstrued it as cold indifference. For his part, Senate President Tito Sotto simply said that no matter which political side you're on, the whole nation mourns when a former president passes away.
And true enough, Senator Amy Marcos said she will remember Pinoy fondly for being a kind and simple soul, regardless of politics and public acrimony. The lawmaker said she will always treasure their shared experience as legislators. They were in Congress, yes. and members of a tiny opposition then. Meanwhile, Manila Mayor Isko Moreno touted the way Pinoy championed good governance reforms, promoted efficiency, and reduced opportunities for corruption. That's what we were talking about just a few minutes ago. He remembers how the Philippines was cited as the fastest growing economy in Asia during Aquino's term.
Finally, Senator Sonny Angara recalled several of Aquino's famous lines such as walang wangwang, walang tongpats, and kayo ang boss ko. Angara says these words, forever etched in the memory of every Filipino, captures Noynoy's stance against the abuse of power by people in power. Former President Gloria Arroyo also joins the Filipino people in prayers. Arroyo said Noynoy will be remembered in history along with late former President Cory Aquino and ex-Senator Ninoy Aquino.
Just before we go there, it's quite interesting that that statement came from former President Arroyo,
Right.
whom former President Aquino sent to jail.
Exactly.
On a charge of plunder, and well, interesting as well. Gloria Arroyo used to be the teacher of Noynoy Aquino in the Ateneo.
This I didn't know. I didn't know this. But yeah, you say it's interesting, but also it's a little bit predictable because during these times, I mean, that's politics. During these times when a former president passes away, again, as Senate President Tito Soto said, walang puli-politika pag ganito na yung nangyayari. You offer words of comfort and encouragement and positive words because I don't think anybody's gonna say anything bad during these times about the person who passed away.
At hindi pa rin po makapaniwala ang marami sa biglaang pagpanaw ni dating Pangulong Noynoy Aquino. Makakausap po natin sa linya ng telepono si Teddy Bagilat, miyembro ng Liberal Party at dating Ifugao Congressman. Magandang hapon, Teddy.
Magandang hapon, Ed.
Hi, Teddy. Kasama ko si Chiki Berhel. Disclosure lang si Teddy, kabarkada ko nung college.
Ayun. Good afternoon po.
Well, Teddy, paano mo nabalitaan ito?
Kaninang umaga, kasi nagulat na ako kasi kata-text lang niya sa akin ng Tuesday.
Oh.
Kaya I always give him regular updates in his party. Nung Tuesday morning, ang last text niya lang is kung advise me if ever assistance is needed, sabi ko, kinakailangan na chat with him. And I was supposed to respond this morning. Sabi ko, siyempre, boss, always look for you for advice. And then, yun, hindi ko nga na-respond. Nabasa ko na lang sa book ka. Pumanaw na nga siya. Kaya nakakagulat ko yun.
Teka, Tuesday lang yan. So, the other day lang yan.
Yeah.
So, ano pa kayo? Nakakapag-text pa kayo nun?
Oo, kasi sabi ko nga, kung gusto lang niya makipagkwentuhan, pwede ko naman siyang puntahan. Sabi niya, yung dialysis niya, yung illness niya, I think it's difficult for him. So sabi ko na lang na I'll just give you regular updates. And then yung late na siya nag-text back, sabi lang niya na, sige, advice, if you need advice, just shout out pa. Yung feeling namin dapat. Kasi ang gusto ko lang kasing padaman sa kanya is lahat ng ginagawa namin ngayon sa party, with the Liberal Party, before transforming into the genuine People's Party. But his legacy, kasi for the past year, hindi siya naging active sa party affairs. In fact, wala nga siya sa 75th anniversary. Parang masifeel ko na may, siguro paano, may konting hugot or whatever. But yung last text niya, nasabi niya, basta kung kailangan niyo na ng tulong, pa-advice lang, parang I felt that it was something positive na going to build up from that. In a way, gusto niyang bumalik sa pagiging aktibo sa partido. Fortunately,
Pero Ted, ano yung pagkakala mo dun sa kalusugan niya in the last few months? Kasi, well, for a lot of people don't really know how his health had been in the last few months, except for a few clues that we'd pick up here and there, like may binanggit yung kapatid niya dati na hindi maganda yung karamdaman niya and all that. Pero maliban dun, wala kaming naririnig eh.
Ang alam ko lang talaga, nagda-dialysis. And kasi binibentahan ko nga siya ng mga strawberries eh. So, the last time na sabi ko, bumili kayo ulit, sabi niya, taas ng sugar niya. And then, I know he was rushed to the hospital. I do know na usually weekends, nag-meet sila ng mga barkada niya. particularly yung members ng the old cabinet. So, akala ko naman hindi ganun kagrabe. But yun nga, once in a while, dinadala siya sa hospital.
Yes, sir. Oo nga, no, tahimik siya after his term. So, interesting to note na yun nga, nakikipagkita din sa mga barkada. But, sir, what are your fond memories po of former President Benigno Aquino? Something on a personal note.
Ako kasi long hair eh. So, hindi magkikita kami. Lagi niyang tokso. Pahiram naman ang buhok mo, mga ganon. O kaya iba yung tingin niya sa akin na parang nagmamayabang na yata. Kasi, siyempre, parang, yun nga, it was holding at that time. But ang hindi ko talaga nakalimutan sa kanya kasi, siyempre sa Congress, gusto namin, paminsan-minsan, no, ipunyag yung aming mga accomplishments. So one time sabi niya sa amin na hindi naman kinakailangan mag-epal ka kasi pag ginawa mo yung trabaho mo, pupurihin ka ng tao. No? Unfortunately, marami sa mga congressmen, hindi ganun yung mindset. No? But that was one thing na to me characterized his presidency. Hindi natin masyadong nakikilala yung mga accomplishments niya. Even, especially when I was congressman, grabe rin talaga yung tulong niya sa probinsya, sa province. Kasi nga, pinagbawal niya talaga na maglagay ng mga billboards niya o mahilig kasi dati pag may mga project ng mga kongresista, doon yung upahan nila, kasama yung Pangulo. Kasi disallowed it. So when I asked him why, sabi niya, hindi naman kinakailangan na mag-epal para lang purihin ka kasi purihin ka naman ng tao, basta gawin yung trabaho.
Last po on my end, pinaka-tumatak po sa inyo sa Administrasyong Aquino.
Ano ha?
Pinaka-tumatak po sa inyo sa Administrasyong Aquino.
Sino ang
Ano yung tumatak sa inyo? Sa iyo. As far as yung 6 years ni Pinoy are concerned.
sa administration, parang sa sobra ng kanyang kapangyarihan bilang Pangulo na Philippine President, pero parang either hesitant siya o natakot siya na gamitin yung kapangyarihan niya para talagang isulong yung kanyang political agenda. Kasi lagi ko nag-reflect minsan ito. Nangyari sa Supreme Court, na ginawa ang constitutional yung PDAP, yung DAP, yung kanyang set bill na RH na dineclare na unconstitutional sa provisions. Hindi siya na-perdine. Marami sa mga kasama namin, even ako parang, kung gusto ng Pangulo, pwede niyang galingan. Influensya ni Congressman, influensya ni Supreme Court, even Congress. Nagde-debate kami sa mga pet bills niya, laging merong conscience vote eh. In a way, siyempre, yun rin yung parang naiisip ko, especially yung last term ko with the third administration, na ang gusto talaga ng Pangulo, wala nang debate. Pero during his time, talagang they debate. And then even the allies were even allowed to go on dissenting vote. Dahil sa kanya, kailangan daw kilalanin at kilalanin yung conscience vote, and that's democracy today.
Actually, I find that quite interesting, Teddy. Kasi nga, there are some people who would say na there are some measures na maaari sanang ipinilit ni dating Pangulong Aquino na itulak sa Kongreso na that would have strengthened the democratic institutions. For example, political party reform bill, among others. Yung
FOI.
FOI. You do remember FOI, di ba? All these things na sana, a lot of the civil society members were saying na sana itinulak ng Pangulo, pero parang hindi niya pinursige. At hinahanap nila yung kanyang basbas para itulak sa Kongreso.
Grabe, we spent so much capital doon sa RH bill.
RH bill.
Sa impeachment na, it took one term to decide on that. It was such a close vote. I think yung mga succeeding bills na gusto niya namin sanang itulak niya, natakot siya na gamitin yung kanyang naiiwan na political capital because during his last term, ang priority niya was Bangsamoro. But that again
yes,
unfortunately, nangyari yung mga sapano. Pero kung sinasabi namin na Tapos pwede bang itulak natin FOI, national land use, sabihin sa atin na I have to use my remaining capital for the bank support. Kasi yun nga, sa sobrang haba ng debate, yung talagang political discourse in Congress, hindi na ipasa yung maraming mga bills na yun, ganda sana na naitulak. Like yung tawag mo, political reform bill, freedom of information. Those were the things na we felt na kung nagamit talaga yung political will, but unfortunately at the time kasi, ang importante was respect for vision, respect for dissenting opinion. So, whether it was good or not, one thing that he respected was political discourse, saka yung independence ng mga bodies natin, executive, legislative, and judiciary. Kasi otherwise, kung gusto mo talaga, kaya hindi na kinakailangan ng mahabang debate. Yun nga, sample lang talaga, RHB. But more than 2 years to finally have it passed. Very, very, very close to.
Pero on the other hand, Teddy, sayang din eh. Kasi kung pinilit niya sana itong mga, mahalaga din na panukala, baka naipasa na finally. Another example, for example, yung anti-dynasty bill na pwede mo sanang paglaanan ng political capital. Pero yun nga pagbabalanse rin yan.
Saka hindi rin niya kasi style na tawagin ka, threaten ba, o harap, o pilit, para sa kanya, tama na yung binanggit niya na priority yung for instance, FOI, o priority yung land reform. Pero ang mga kongresista kasi, ang binili talagang special attention. Kumbaga, yung pagalitan ka. O bigyan ka ng malaking incentive, but he never, it wasn't his style para sa kanya. Ito na yung aking priority, ito yung dahilan kung bakit itulak, pagdebatehin nyo. And if you really believe dun sa agenda na yon, then ipapasa nyo ito. Ganun siya.
Yeah. Pero Ted, I suppose a bit of irony din doon. In trying to preserve political capital, because in the end it is political capital nga that you want to reserve for other measures that you might want to push. The people who hold the political, the people who for whom you protect the political capital ended up shifting sides or jumping to the other fence by the time the new administration came in.
Well, that's our political culture. It's really very unfortunate. Sino nga ang presidente, lahat naman sumubol. We really wanted to push the political party reform bill. At the time kasi, ang laging iniisip ko, if ever there's going to be an impeachment case, then dapat aliado mo yung biggest party, yung sariling partido. So, those were the things that you needed to compromise with. Pinoy rin kasi, hindi siya politician in the sense na marami siyang mga personal na kakilala ng mga kongresista, mga governors. The only reason why, of course, yung naging presidente siya, lahat nag-gravitate towards him. Nasa sa kanyang mga lieutenants na yun, sa party namin, na parang palakasin yung kanyang political base. But yun nga, hindi niya style na yung pag-alaga ba, sobra na ini-spoil mo na yung mga political allies mo, to the point na basta kung anong sabihin mo lang, lahat sunod-sunuran. So that's good in one sense, pero at the same time, tulad nga ng sabi niya, may mga kahinaan rin ng ganong klaseng pamumulitika. But that's it.
Okay, maraming salamat, former Ifugao Congressman Teddy Bagilat. Ikaw naman, Teddy, ba't mo binibenta ng strawberry yung tao may diabetes?
Hindi ko naman alam na may nag-grabe yung diabetes niya pero sabi niya, sige, bili siya. Tapos yung bibentahan ko ulit, sabi niya, wag na muna kasi nga, umaas daw yung sugar niya.
Okay.
Sabi ko, sorry po.
Okay, maraming salamat, Teddy.
Thank you.
More tributes are coming in for the late president, remembering his legacy and immortalizing what he stood for as the 15th president of the Republic. Senator Risa Ontiveros described Noynoy as a good man who enabled other public servants to do a lot of good under his watch. The Davao City government also expressed its condolences to the Aquino family. The LGU said the Philippine flag in the entire city shall be flown at half-mast until the former president's burial. The Ilonggos are also in mourning, according to Iloilo City Mayor Jerry Treñas. He added that the Philippines just lost a leader that brought us a robust economy under his term. Human rights lawyer Chel Diokno shared a personal anecdote remembering how Noynoy stayed for more than an hour at the wake of Diokno's mom. Diokno thanked Aquino for, quote, serving the country well, uplifting the lives of many Filipinos, and gave the nation a reason to dream of a better future. Finally, the EU delegation in Manila also extended their condolences not just to the Aquino family, but to the whole nation. The European Union family in Manila said they are mourning a friend who pushed for a deepening of the relations between the Philippines and the European Union.
We'll be back with more stories after the break, so please stay with us. You're still watching our special coverage on the death of former President Noynoy Aquino. I'm Ed Lingao.
And I'm Chicky Verhel.
You know, in a way, you might say that Pinoy was living on borrowed time, but it was 34 years worth of borrowed time. Kasi in 1987, he almost died during the August 28, 1987 coup attempt.
Okay.
That was a time when Gringo Honasan's group was trying to capture Malacanang. He sent troops military rebels to Alegi to try to get Malacanang. Nagkataon na pauwi si Noynoy along with his bodyguards ng madaling araw well, between midnight and madaling araw. So tinambangan sila ng mga rebeldeng sundalo. Of his 4 bodyguards, 3 were killed. The 4th was critically wounded, well, seriously wounded, shielding Noynoy from the bullets. But he survived. Si Noynoy also survived, but he
Did he get hit?
He sustained 5 bullet wounds.
Wow. Do you remember where these bullet wounds were?
Well, there's at least 1 bullet wound that we all remember kasi 1 bullet is still lodged in his spine, in his neck, near his spine. They could never move the bullet kasi delikado, baka magalaw yung spine.
Ito yung sinasabi nila. Sabi nga ni Ed na he was probably living on 34 years of borrowed time. Kasi sinasabi nga nila, destiny mo talaga maging pangulo. hindi mo pwedeng planuhin destiny mo
I
daw
don't want to
talaga.
talk about destiny in the presidency because I would like to think that there's more to the presidency than destiny.
Well, oo, yeah, of course. But they say kahit anong gawin mo, no? Just like si Mar Rojas with all his political ambitions, hindi talaga napupunta dun eh. Pag destiny mo talaga kahit nakaupo ka lang dun, ayan,
But
pangulo
it's
ka.
interesting. What you pointed out a while ago, was it Dindo that you asked of na yun nga, na the Cory magic
Right.
worked for
For Noynoy.
Noynoy, and what could possibly or could there possibly be a Noynoy magic
For the opposition for
Yeah,
next year's
yeah.
elections.
I bring that up kasi it's just a point of interest lang. Cory Aquino died around 2 months before the filing of the certificates of candidacy in 2009. She died in August
Right.
of 2009. Well, everybody knows what happened next. There was a move to draft Noynoy Aquino to run for the presidency. Mar Rojas by September or a month before the filing of candidacies gave in, and Noynoy ran under the Liberal Party, and later on he won. Now, 12 years later, Noynoy Aquino died 3 months before the filing of candidacies.
Right. Yung nakakapanindig balahibo, no?
I don't know how else to put it. I'm just putting some facts on the table, and
Right.
and I'm just pointing out how interesting it all is when you look at it from a distance. That's how everything looks at if you put it on a timetable.
Yes, correct. Yeah. Buti na nilatag mo ng ganyan because now we see the entire picture. Now, kanina, no,
Although, of course, just to put qualifications there, ibang-iba ang sitwasyon ni Cory Aquino nung 86 doon
Okay.
sa sitwasyon ni Noynoy Aquino nung 2009. I mean, those are two different worlds altogether. Cory Aquino faced an entirely different political creature in 86 versus Noynoy Aquino in 2009. So, not all the parallels would apply. Yun lang. There are some interesting tidbits in history that
parang
seem to
mukhang
jive.
coincidence.
Coincidence,
Oo,
yeah.
coincidence,
May
yeah.
points of coincidence lang.
When we were talking to your friend kanina, si Sir Ted, no? Sinabi niya na
Long hair yun.
Ilonggo rin.
Ay, hindi. Ifugao.
Ifugao. Okay.
Oo.
Yun.
Nagbabahag yun. Sa Congress, sa mga zona, nagbabahag yun.
Pa-follow ko siya sa Instagram.
Hindi na siya sa Congress eh.
Pero when we were talking to him, no, sinabi niya kanina na si former President Noynoy Aquino parang takot gumamit ng kapangyarihan. Which is very, it would go against logic kung ikaw ay presidente, di ba? Which is probably, I was thinking, siguro kaya iniisip ng ibang tao, weak tong Pangulo natin, puro PlayStation, or ganun yung, di ba? Those were the, parang
least that
some
was
of
a
the issues.
stereotype,
Yeah, the stereotype, yes. But yun nga, takot na gumamit ng kapangyarihan, very interesting characteristic. Kasi dapat Pangulo ka, di ba? Parang
At
ako ang masusunod.
At yung pagpapaliwanag ni Teddy kanina na yung paghihimay ng mga pagbabalanse. Saan mo gagamitin yung kapital mo para itulak kung aling proyekto o anong programa yung kailangan mo itulak. I know that kasi si Teddy for the longest time was part of that group in the Liberal Party that's pushing for political party reform. It's a controversial bill na binanggit nga ni Dindo that they've been pushing since 2001 that would, for example, penalize turncoatism. Yung pagbabalimbing. Kasi
Right.
every 6 years, naglilipatan yung mga congressman at governor at mga mayor sa kung sinong partidong nanalo. So
Oo.
there's no such thing in the Philippines, unfortunately, as political loyalties to a party. So parties here they're not based anymore on ideology, they're based on personality.
Yes.
That's the result of not having any party reform. They've been pushing for that for the longest time, but who wants to talk about political party reform when it's the most convenient thing for any legislator
Yeah.
to go with the flow?
Interesting that you also brought that up kasi 'di ba ngayon ay may mga usap-usapan na tatakbo nga ni si Mayor Inday Sara, no? And then she's of course hugpong ng pagbabago, tapos sinasabi nila susuportahan niya ng PDP laban kasi sinasabi nga ni Ed
ng
kanina,
lakas.
it's not anymore really ideologies, it's personalities. Ang sinasabi naman ng PDP laban, well, she doesn't have to be a PDP laban member naman. Pwede naman siyang suportahan kahit hindi PDP laban member. So yeah, the lines are very much they have faded.
So yun, yung political party reform bill na marami nang hinayang na hindi naitulak ni Aquino nung siya ay nakaupo. Kasi he had a political capital then. Kasi nga, until the end of his term, 50% satisfaction rating is nothing to laugh at. Kasi everybody else was falling by the wayside. Kita mo nga yung mga numbers eh. Si GMA was at negative 45.
Yeah,
95 percentage points down.
correct.
Si ERAP was positive 2 and ERAP was a populist.
Yes.
Diba? Although he only got to stay for 2 years. FVR was at positive 9 and Cory was at negative 5. Si Pinoy was at 50%. So that was pretty high. He had very good political capital then. Pero yun nga, hindi na itulak yung party reform, yung Freedom of Information Act, and a slew of other bills. Kasi sabi nga ni Teddy Bagil kanina, in the last years of the Pinoy administration, his focus was the Bangsamoro Organic Act. Kasi the peace agreement with the MILF was signed during Pinoy's time in 2012 or 2013. I was in Malacanang eh. And he wanted to cement it with the Bangsamoro Organic Law.
And would you, I don't know if you've spoken to analysts about this issue, pero would they agree na ito yung talagang mas urgent nung time na yun kumpara dun sa mga freedom of information and others na dapat sanang isinulong o plinanong isinulong?
It's hard to say kasi, in the end, ligawan sa Kongreso yan eh. Well, of course, you're a popular president. Maybe you can push so many bills at a time, but can you push all the bills at a time?
Right.
At the same time?
Priority.
Diba? So ano uunahin mo? And plus, the Bangsamoro Organic Law had a troubled time because of Mama Sapano. So lalong naubos yung political capital. Well, these are the things that happened 6 years ago.
Okay, mga kapatid, tuloy na natin. Former President Noynoy Aquino was swept into power in 2010 following the death of his mother, former President Cory Aquino, in 2019. Cory's death prompted calls for Noynoy, who was then a senator, to run for president. Pinoy told Bloomberg News that he never had any ambition to become president, but he believed that fate and the Filipino people put him in the position. Aquino was born on February 8, 1960 to democracy icons Ninoy and Cory Aquino, and he was the only son among 5 children. He's an economics graduate from Ateneo de Manila University who later served as a congressman and senator. He represented the 2nd District of Tarlac for 3 terms before placing 6th in the May 2007 senatorial elections. Before his career in the government, Aquino worked as a retail supervisor and promotions manager at Nike Philippines. I guess we put that there just to remind people of his background sa mga ngayon lang nanonood.
Now, former President Benigno Aquino's term was marked with several controversies. These include the Luneta hostage crisis, which happened 2 months after he assumed office. In August 2010, 8 Hong Kong tourists were killed by former policeman Rolando Mendoza, or Captain Rolando Mendoza, in an incident later known as the Manila hostage crisis. Noynoy also saw his trust rating slip during the impeachment trial of former Supreme Court Chief Justice Renato Corona in 2012. A year later, Aquino was heavily criticized for the way he handled Super Typhoon Yolanda that left over 6,000 Filipinos dead. Major political storms also came Aquino's way when the pork barrel scam and the disbursement acceleration program's controversies were exposed during his term or during his time. But as we talked about a while ago, yung PDAF, yung Priority Development Assistance Fund or the pork barrel is not an Aquino creation. It predates his administration. It simply was that that was the time when the Supreme Court ruled that pork barrel was illegal. Largely because of the pork barrel scam ni Janet Lim Napoles,
Right.
which was exposed during Aquino's administration. So nagkataon na doon bumagsak sa panahon yon. Yung DAP, of course, sa panahon nga ni Pinoy. Yung Disbursement Acceleration Program, kung saan ang sabi ng Supreme Court, hindi pwede na i-declare lang basta-basta na savings ng executive yung pera tapos i-rechannel sa ibang departamento.
right now, I mean, ngayon ang daming nagme-message na na yung update dun sa kay sa mga labi, no, ni former President Noynoy Aquino. Now, we're still waiting, mga kapatid, dun sa kanilang sa family, no, ng statement ng family. Pero I did see kanina, no, na yung isang staff member daw sa Aquino family, mga kapatid, ay nakita na umalis sa Aquino residence dun sa Times Street sa Quezon City, na dala-dala daw yung isang barong Tagalog. Ayan. May report po na ganyan.
The Times Street is the family home.
Right.
Number 25 Times Street. Doon nakatira dati si Cory and then later on doon tumira na si Noynoy, who of course till the end was unmarried. So he was the bachelor of the family. So yun. Yeah, well, kaya nga sa capital din nila dahil malapit lang sa Times Street.
Yeah, nung sinabi mo kanina, Ed, no, na there are parallelisms between yung termino ni former President Cory Aquino at former President Noynoy Aquino. Now, when former President Noynoy Aquino entered the presidential scene, no, para siyang golden boy, parang hindi siya married, parang he had all the time in the world to serve the nation. Hindi married, tapos kakapanaw lang ng kanyang nanay, so meron nga yung may emotional aspect. Now, how would you dun sa termino ng kanyang nanay, may parallelism ba in this respect? Kasi Philippines, we're a very emotional nation.
Yeah.
Oo.
Ang dami rin kasing parallels Like for example, but some of it might be intentional as well For example, in 1986, Cory Aquino was drafted by a group that collected 1 million signatures for her to run as president. Kasi she did not want to run for president against Marcos. The people who drafted Cory Aquino for the presidency, among them, was Don Chino Roses, the owner of the owner of the Manila Times. So Chino Roses got 1 million signatures, gave it to Cory, and in the end, Cory ran. In 2009, after Cory Aquino died, the son of Chino Roses, si Eddie Roses, did his own draft. He collected 1 million signatures to press Noynoy Aquino to run for the presidency.
Right.
Yun nga nangyari.
Oh, ayun pa. So that's okay, one parallelism. Another parallelism is kasi yung kanina na bring up natin, 'di ba, na maraming mga kritiko na nagsasabi na si Pinoy puro PS station, puro PlayStation, puro laro ng games. Si naman yung si former President Corazon Aquino, she's only a housewife. Parang ganun. So downplayed talaga yung kanilang management skills sa pagkapangulo. Sa mga ewan ko kung meron kang na-interview dati sa mga leadership styles nila. Pero are they very different in terms of leadership
They
style?
have similarities and they have differences. I would say that they have similarities in the sense that they were both very uncomfortable with politics. At least on the surface, they did seem to be uncomfortable with politics, especially Cory Aquino. Kasi Cory Aquino came in from the cold. At least si Noynoy Aquino had several terms in Congress and in the Senate before he became the president. Although he's been criticized for an unremarkable stint in the legislature. Pero in that sense, both of them were not that comfortable with politics or the media. In fact, both of them were antagonistic many times with the media. Si Cory refused to be interviewed by the media. Si Noynoy every year, unfortunately, would be invited to media events where he would criticize the media. But then again, it's give and take kasi the media also criticizes him.
Yeah. Speaking of that,
So it's also give and take.
Yung the media criticizing him kasi maraming ang kinukumpara syempre sa Duterte administration, no. Yung administrasyon daw na ito ay talagang kailangan media keep your mouth shut. Or if you're gonna say something good about this administration. Parang ganun yung air or yung impression, no, ng ilan sa mga kritiko ng administrasyong ito versus nung yung mga nakaraang administration, including former President Noynoy Aquino's administration. Okay, pwede naman kayong mag-criticize. It's freedom of speech.
Well,
you can say whatever you want.
The other thing, as a matter of style, the other thing that I read about Noynoy is that he was very detail oriented. In fact, that's one of the things I heard about him when he was in Congress. Isa siya sa mga parating a-attend ng budget hearings. He was very detail-oriented. In fact, some of them would say na in some of his meetings as president, may kasama parati ang
Calculator.
Na pag magbigyan ng mga numero, magko-compute yan each.
Economics kasi, di ba?
Sabagay.
Quantitative talaga siya. Quantitative and kailangan may historical data siguro.
So in that sense, meron siyang meron siyang palo na I require from you a certain amount of accuracy and detail.
So mali pala yung impression ng mga tao na he's just sitting on his job, parang not doing anything.
Well, I don't know where that came from it's one of the more popular myths that went around that all he does is play the PlayStation. I don't even know if he does. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. I don't know. But it's one of the more popular myths that have gone around even while he was sitting in Malacanang.
Oo, kinukumpara.
Naging uso nga yung terminong noy-noying eh.
Noy-noying, yes.
Yeah. So
For the younger ones, Ed, na hindi alam yung noy-noying. What is noy-noying?
well, parang kukuya-kuya ka lang na wala kang ginagawa. Unfortunately, that was one of the things that became a catchword during his time by his critics. Did he deserve it or not? A lot of the people I talked to would point out that hindi siya tatamad-tamad. He was particular with output. He was particular with details. Yun lang he was somebody that some people love to hate.
That's true. Ano siya siguro, no? It's either you really like him or you really hate him. It's just one of those people. Pero kapag kinukumpara si former President Noynoy Aquino dun kay former President Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo, talagang yun yung pinupoint out na si Arroyo, very hardworking, very on time. Noynoy, always late at walang
in one
ginagawa.
sense, pareho silang hardworking. Pero on the other hand, magkaiba sila ng style.
In what way?
Si GMA and I wish we could invite we could invite Joey Francisco here. Si GMA kasi talagang talagang stickler yan talaga to the process, to details din yan. She's a technocrat eh. I mean, she used to be trade assistant secretary nung panahon ni Cory. And she was she's an economics professor.
Also, yes.
Diba?
Economics din.
So and she had a very very quick temper when it came to your failure to perform. Sabi nga ni Joey Francisco mambabato yan ng laptop. Kung sakaling magalit sa iyo talaga dahil sa hindi mo nagawa ang trabaho mo, maiinis yan talaga. So consequently, yung cabinet niya were very masinop. Kasi kung hindi, tatama ka ng laptop.
Tatamaan ka ng laptop. Versus Noynoy, how would he handle itong mga
si Noynoy daw, from what I heard and from what I've read, si Noynoy parang parang barkada na parang pare. Iba silang style. Pareho silang madetalye, pareho silang masinop in that sense, pero iba yung handling nila ng mga problema.
And I guess that's why for the critics of former President Noynoy Aquino, that's why I guess mas prefer nila si GMA dahil syempre pag Pilipino iniisip kailangan ng disiplina. So somebody like GMA with an iron fist and detalyado na in the way that she was very detailed, they thought that worked better for the Philippines kumpara dito sa for lack of better terms and yung mga kritiko nga na nagsasabi lalamya.
Well, perhaps yun nga the myth of Noynoy Aquino playing PlayStation while people were getting killed in Mama Sapano, well obviously that's a myth because he was in Zamboanga City. These are details that get lost in the weeds these are details that people latch on because they're emotionally charged details. Well, pseudo details, you might say.
Probably also emotionally charged. Yun talaga yung magtitickle ng mga Pinoy.
And also, Noynoy came in at a time na ang daming problema ng Pilipinas. The presidency as an institution was really eroded. Can you imagine the negative 45 performance rating for president on the way out. I'm
Yeah.
talking about Gloria Arroyo. Diba? Na-erode talaga yung credibility ng presidency during that time.
It would be also interesting to see, no, speaking of the presidency, kasi next year na nga yung elections, and going back nga to that Pinoy charm or lack of it, maraming ang nagsasabi na, including si Professor Dindo Manhit, na maybe there will be some positive effect on the opposition but not as much. Ang mga kritiko talaga niya nagsasabi, walang epekto yan. Dahil,
It's interesting how things develop after this. Kasi, anything that happens in the months before the election campaign will have an effect on the elections and could be used for or against candidates.
Correct.
Fortunately or unfortunately. So there. We have via Zoom Ichu Villanueva, Associate Editor of the Philippine Star, coming to us via Zoom. Ichu, kamusta ka dyan?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Eddie.
Hi, Ichu. I'm with Chiki Verhel.